Hi, everybody. I'm Marquis Devereaux, your host of Verbal Assault Livestream. I was trying to eat some ramen noodles, and then we had a technical difficulty, and then I got pulled into the mix. So I hope you didn't hear me slurping or anything coming on, because I like to be dressed and ready to go. We are a political podcast. We have viewpoints that are coming from real people talking about real issues in real time. I'm getting notes from production, and the notes are coming very, very quickly. We talk about politics, and sometimes politics involves money. Sometimes politics involves sex. Sometimes politics involves class, and today it's going to involve race. And not everybody likes to talk about race, but it's part of the news cycle, and so we have to hit it. Introducing today's panelists. Usually Wednesday show is our strongest show. Cherokee Black, editor, YouTube personality, author. Kirk Adair, author, professor, historian. Brian Parker, parent. Brother's got a background in hospitality, and he wants to work as an actor, and he is now a minor equity owner in Embassy, the new channel that we are initiating for the podcast, as well as other TV shows that we will have. So you guys will be also seeing us on television as well. I'd like to introduce Mr. Rob Arnold. He is the host of Political Firestorm. He's also a descendant of the Addams family, not the one that you see on TV with those people with the black hair, but John Adams, John Quincy Adams, and also Samuel Adams. The beer is not made by Samuel Adams, but the beer recognized his close relative, Samuel Adams. Then we had Miss Nurka Encarnacion. She homeschools her daughter. She is online doing her research. She does not have time to get on TV because TV is biased, and she feels she can't even get a clear perspective from these journalists. Lastly, we have Samuel Kuchera, who has traveled internationally. He is also one of those minor equity partners, as well as Cherokee Black. And he is someone that I rely upon very, very closely for business decisions. So having him as the co-host of the show is certainly an acknowledgement of that. Wednesday's topic: wipe them off the effing map. Fired North Carolina cops accused of racism. Just so everybody knows, one of the contributing panelists had a discussion with our production manager and said, oh, you know, it's about race, I don't want to be there. And I get it. I get it. But until we're at least all on the same page and we can acknowledge where we've been, we can't be clear on where we are. And so because of that, these incidents are still happening because of that. Unfortunately, the cops were Caucasian, and there were 3 of them. So, Michael Kevin Piner. Now, if your name is Michael, why do they call you Kevin? Maybe that's part of the problem. And is an officer in North Carolina, and he mentions, I don't know what city, he mentions Black Lives Matter protests will lead to civil war.
Wilmington.
Is the key word in this sentence civil or war? Brian Parker, I give you the floor.
So it was in Wilmington, North Carolina.
And I'm sorry, Brian, you are from North Carolina, and that is something I should have acknowledged with our audience today, because this topic is very personal for you.
Oh, absolutely. Now, here's the funny thing. I'm not surprised at all, and I'm sure most people that heard what he said was surprised. And the reason people are becoming more outraged and surprised is because what people think people say when no one's listening is now being put out there.
Right.
That's the only thing that's really changed. I mean, I've been in North Carolina pretty much all my life, except for the last 5 years here in New York. And
oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Oh, so, man,
So I know
biscuits, grits, and gravy for breakfast.
I've been eating good all my life. Yeah. So I know how it is when I expressed last week about having anxiety as a Black person when the police come around you, is because those things that now you're hearing them say,
Right.
we've known that that's how they felt. And before somebody jumps in and says something about, well, there's a few bad apples and all that. Well, it's a whole lot of bad apples being exposed right now.
Right.
It must be an infestation of worms going on, because there's a lot of bad apples.
Do you know what he said? What exactly he said? Because I have it in front of me. He said,
would you please read it? Would you please?
Okay, he said, we are going to go out and start slaughtering them effing N-word. I can't wait. God, I can't wait. That's what he said. I called up my nephew and sent him that so that he would be careful, because he works there. He's in Wilmington.
I want our audience and our panelists, I want our audience and our panelists to understand that this is language that's being said, quote unquote, anonymously. But now what people are doing is they are tracking where these anonymous statements are coming from.
Right.
And now people are being held accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
They lost their jobs. It was a private moment between.
I'm on a side note here. I lost my train of thought. So I'm going to go back to the question.
Mm-hmm.
We are just going, the subject is very personal for me, and maybe that's why it causes me to kind of lose myself. We are just going to go out slaughtering them F and N, the F word, the N word. So who should scrutinize law enforcement? Yurka Encarnacion, who should be scrutinizing law enforcement if this type of language is happening, if these type of threats are being made?
Well,
because I'm sorry, sister, if we remember, we're referring to we're trying to associate the protesters with the rioters, as if, being in a protest means that you're associated with violence. You were going to say, sister, before I cut you off?
What I was going to say, you asked me the question, who should be reinforcing? Whoever is the governor of that state, the mayor, they are the ones who should be reinforcing any type of situation there to bring it to a stop. I know you're going to say that it's the president, but the president under the Constitution, he's not supposed to interfere with the state unless the state asks him for. They have to ask him for whatever help he needs.
When you're talking about blatant racism, you can't erase that. That's in their bloodline.
I wasn't going to say the president.
It doesn't have anything to do with the president, the mayor, or the governor. These are
Thank you.
These are racist.
I think the assumption was, Brian Parker, that I, as the host of the show, was going to make a lead question to direct. Yes.
Sorry.
They call that a gotcha question. It's what attorneys do in the courtroom when they back you up into a corner and you only have one direction to go into.
In fact, New Yorker answered the question improperly. The question, New Yorker, he asked you was, who should scrutinize? You asked who should be enforced. So try again now.
Okay, because that's what I thought he said, that who should reinforce it. Okay.
Scrutinize. Just scrutinize. I want to know who should be scrutinizing law enforcement.
Same people, the governors and the mayors.
Now, let me just put out a radical concept for everybody. The police work for you.
Right.
Correct.
And since they work for you, why would one need to rely upon a governor or a mayor if they work for you?
Let me correct that. There is something wrong there. The police does not work for us. They work for the state. The sheriff is the one that works for the people. You got to get that clear. It's not the police. It's the sheriff. If you have a problem, you go to the sheriff, not the police.
Where's the sheriff? Deputy Dog? What's going on?
Deputy Dog. There are sheriff's departments all over the country.
We don't see them.
And they're the ones under the Constitution who protect our rights. It's not the police.
In the U.S. Constitution, it's the sheriff's department.
The states and the properties.
Okay, one second,
That
guys.
is why we're in so much trouble, because we don't know who to call for.
Right
Well,
on.
we know.
Okay. I like what Yurka just said. She clarified that the police don't work for the people, they work for the state.
They do.
Now, Yurka, you have mentioned before the United States of America being a business, being in debt. And now I'm sort of understanding what is happening. Now, Kirkader, I don't know if you know where I'm going in regards, but if the sheriff works for the people and the police work for the state, could this perhaps be the crux of our problem, is that the state needs funds to continue operating? And if locking up people, the most vulnerable people who just happen to be African American or GBLTQ or poor, well then so be it, because we need to earn revenue to keep this operation functioning. Is there a connection here? Am I being realistic in this assessment?
Where are you getting your funding? Why are you relating this to funding?
Well,
because New York is right. The sheriffs are elected. The police are appointed and hired. Okay. With regard to funding, they should not be defunded. The funding should be increased and the training should be increased. They get out of high school and a high school bully is immediately hired as a policeman. No, they need, in any other sane country, they have to go to school for 2 to 3 years to become a policeman. They have to understand.
And that's not a requirement here? I thought they had to go to John Jay College or something.
No, they can get it with
Some do go to
college
for and study
they can get it with a high school.
but it's not mandatory.
One second.
It's not even
One second.
No mandatory.
One second. Kirk, please re-clarify what you were saying. They're graduating high school and what?
They're graduating high school with a high school diploma, and then they apply to the police department. They could be the high school bully and they're immediately hired. There's no vetting, and the vetting is left up to the states, okay? And the thing is that in addition to the vetting being left up to the states, since Operation Desert Storm, they have now been militarizing the police with an agenda. And it's the deep state agenda to bring martial law to the country. And then what they were hoping to do is nationalize all police forces across the United States and make them one organization. The incident in North Carolina is despicable. The governor there should be personally, I feel there should be oversight committees to every police department in every town and statewide. That they should
say that again, please. You feel
any of the stuff that goes on like this should be immediately handled immediately, and it must be immediately handled, fired, prosecuted, finished. That's it. And too many times they allow the states to drag their feet on it, and that has become a big problem.
Okay, so Kirk, you bring up a very, very good point, and I had asked you to re-clarify something that you said. You said, did anyone else get a gist of the statement? Because I'm not even quite clear what was being said. The Wi-Fi was in and out a little bit.
Yeah,
Oversight. Oversight.
Yes, and Kirkader, you said there should be oversight of the police department by whom?
There should be if it's a city police department, there should be a city oversight or a town oversight committee.
Civilians, yes.
Civilians.
But isn't that what
they used to have a civilian review board?
The police are here to assist us. They do not make the laws. They are only here to enforce the law.
Okay, Cherokee Black had something that you wanted to
think they're enforcing. They're making it.
Cherokee, go ahead.
I said that they used to have a civilian review board for law enforcement in New York. When I was growing up and until about maybe 20, 30 years ago, the policemen were a part of the community. They knew everybody. We knew who they were. And there was a community thing. They wouldn't shoot you because they knew your family. If you did something wrong, it was taken care of like that. It wasn't,
Yeah.
and there was a review board. There was. I don't know what happened to. Like you said, maybe it's because it's become militarized.
Okay, and Daniel John, my brother, you've been MIA. I'm gonna call you Mia. Your name isn't Mr. Daniel John anymore. It's Mia. Mr. Mia, I'm glad to have you back to the program. I hope you'll be joining a little more frequently because we're not always sure when you're going to be here, but I know you're a busy guy. Who would you say, from the right perspective, should be scrutinizing law enforcement? Who would you say? Okay.
That the police are going to have are getting.
I'm having some trouble hearing you. Can you come a little bit closer to your mic? Okay, I don't seem to be getting any response, so I'm going to put Mr. John on hold. I'm going to redirect the question to Rob Arnold.
Well, I believe that Cherokee is exactly right. There used to be these committees where it was like, mixed in with the civilians, and that was the way to go. But I think that we've outgrown it because we've got such a high population now. And then what Kirk Adair is talking about with the militarization of our police forces, I think what we're seeing now is blowback against that. I think that blowback is terribly unfortunate. I think we really need to, everyone just have cooler heads and understand the difference between protesters and rioters, protesters and looters. And so, and let's be clear, those protests, when they're out there, there are lots of the rioters and looters among them. That's just a fact. They're in the mix. And so then what you end up with is a menacing mob. And so I think, martial law is maybe where
Rob
we're
Arnold,
headed.
I got to challenge you.
Please do.
The United States has a reputation for mob justice and vigilante justice.
Well,
it's
all countries of the world.
It's learned behavior.
Well, I'm answering your point. I think there's
Tulsa, Oklahoma is a perfect example of that.
Okay.
But you're
not talking about
you're saying
Oklahoma. We're talking about what's gone down in North Carolina, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Huh?
Listen, we're talking about race issues. So unfortunately,
but North Carolina, what that guy said, in his private conversation,
there were 3 of them.
It's just, there were a few people there. I think that they are just, idiots. Be talking about F and Ners.
Right.
And there's no reason to be talking like that. But he's not talking about. Let's be clear here.
We don't know if he was talking. He may have been planning on doing. We don't know.
As much of a jackass.
No,
as
it was a quote.
Really is. I'm going to say we don't really know. We don't know who that guy is 100%. So he looks like a complete jackass, but he's not talking about black people in general. He's talking about the looters and the rioters, and the other shoe going to drop on them at some point.
So should he go and kill some fucking niggers?
No. What he should do is go out and arrest people. If they resist and they start shooting, you're going to just kill them, white, black, or otherwise. What do you think? It's all nothing but black people in there? You got all kinds of white people in Antifa. They're a bunch of scum. Look, you could say that name calling is not okay, but I'm telling you, it's not about name calling. It's about observational. They're scum.
Well, let's be clear to our audience. Nigger's not a name; it's a slur. Right. For African Americans that use the word in rap, shut the fuck up. I'm not going to dice that any other way. Stop being an ignorant buffoon. Stop talking to your community like a complete ass. Speak like you are educated. Speak like you are empowered. I had to take a moment, people, because I'm so tired of these young black men that are speaking like that. Because you're giving these white people who don't like you, the ones that don't like you, you're giving them a reason to get up in your face and call you a nigger and say, yeah, I'm going to call you a nigger because you called yourself one. And
well,
I'm going to share something.
Can I say one thing real quick?
I'm going to stop you for a second. I'm going to let you add right after. I was just called nigger 3 weeks ago by somebody, and that's somebody who wanted to do business with me. So if you think it rarely happens, I want you all to think again. Robbie, go ahead, please.
Yeah, the one quick thing I want to say, well, there's 2 quick things. One, the clarification on the police. The police don't work for the people. They work for the state, but they serve the people. So let's be clear on that. The other thing is, I think there are a lot of black guys that say, yo, what's up, my nigga?
Rob,
We
Rob,
just,
We know that. We got.
don't
got
say
that.
that. Don't, Rob, don't say that.
Mark,
I'll say whatever the hell word I want to say.
No, you won't.
no, Mark,
no.
he just
I will put my hands
Okay,
on you.
stop,
Do not say that
stop.
word.
I'll knock you the hell out.
Okay.
Look, I'm
So-
telling
so-
you.
So why
So-
is it
so-
okay?
Hands on me,
just
you're gonna get hurt.
Don't
Now,
say
why
that
is it
word.
Why is it
Second.
okay to make a point?
The host is speaking.
Visceral reaction. Look,
Stop.
I'm trying.
Stop it. God damn it, we just spoke about this. We are recording
I'm
the
just
show.
making a
We have
point.
to show more respect for this audience. Now, please. You've never heard me act like that or speak like that. And I don't like saying the word because the word is derogatory. And no Caucasian person has the permission to say the word. If I am not clear, let me make myself clear now. Black people that say the word, you're fucking fools. White people that say the word, you're disrespectful. Cherokee, Brian, I acquiesce. Samuel, I acquiesce. I got one more question. I can't even ask the question. Go ahead. If you guys, please, discuss.
I'm sorry, Marquis. I'm sorry. But I feel the same way. And when I tried to explain this to Nick, there's certain places you cannot go. Just because you hear people say it, don't mean you say it. When you feel like you have so much hubris and arrogance to sit there and think you're going to come on the stage, and I'm dead serious, and I don't mean to take it personally, but you're not Trump. Trump got Secret Service. He can say Pocahontas and Kung Flu. You don't have Secret Service.
And Pocahontas is derogatory to Native Americans. And if in Native Americans are not, well, we consider them red, so we consider them a race. I believe the whole concept of race is bullshit, but yes, it's racist. Pocahontas is racist. Kung Flu is racist.
Can I say why he said it? The reason why he said it was because she was saying that she was a Native Indian and she wasn't. And the reason why people were saying that is because there are treaties that are made within the United States and the Native Indians, and she was trying to take advantage of it.
You don't know what it is or not. You don't know.
And I call her Pocahontas too. She's a fool.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, but there you go. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Listen to what Nirka just said. Nirka just said she was a Native Indian. Mr. Daniel John, what country do you come from?
I'm an Indian.
Okay. Are you an Indian?
Mm-hmm.
My parents are Indians. I am an Indian. Yeah.
Because you come from India.
Yes.
So it was an ignorant person who thought they were in India that said Indians.
Right.
Let's stop calling people Indian. Native Americans.
Native Americans are called First Nation. They were the
first.
But
We're here first.
That's right.
And this term Indian and this term, what's the otthe term we use?
Native to the land. That's okay.
Red face or something like that. What's the name of the team, guys? What's the name of the sport? Redskins. Calling them Redskins, well, people find that racist.
It is.
So Rob, I'm sorry to get upset and have to raise my voice like that.
I don't give a damn.
Okay, but
that's the problem.
But
I don't give a damn about his raising his voice. I'm going to interject, but that's the problem. That's just too stupid.
Nobody.
Shut up. Look, Marquis, I don't mind if you raise your voice at me.
Nobody has permission to say the word nigger. The only reason I said
First off, I didn't say nigger. I said nigga. There's a big difference.
And
that's those black people who use it.
Let's educate everybody. Let's educate everybody.
Oh, Lord.
Neither one is any good. And the people that try to bypass the pain of one to say the other, that's buffoonery. Okay?
What's buffoonery is that people see blacks using the word left and right, and then they turn around and say, why are you saying that? So I can say it too. That's what my point was trying. The point I was trying to make is that when white people think that they can use that word simply because black men use it every day amongst themselves, is white people
I don't use it. I don't use it.
Hold on.
Let
It's
him
white people
finish.
not getting it.
But,
It's that
but you
those
know something.
men that
You
do
know
that.
something.
They do that because it's kind of spiteful, and I don't blame them.
What is okay? Hold on. Rob, what's spiteful? What's spiteful about what I've
They're
done?
saying, I'll tell you what listen, I'm trying to convey a point for crying out loud.
I need you to shorten it though.
When young black men use that word amongst themselves.
And they're an isolated group.
Right. And in this day and age, they're basically saying, we can use this word amongst ourselves, but because you white people used it in such a horrible way, get in the back of the bus, you can't drink from this water fountain, you cannot use it.
That's true.
And so what I was trying to convey is that white people ought not use that word in a general sense. And those cops in North Carolina.
Ever.
Really? No. If I'm going to assign that word, I'm not such an emotional idiot that I'm going to be like, I can't assign the word ever to somebody who uses it. Nah,
Bob Arnold, hold on. Let's put it on pause for a second.
To generalize.
You know, there used to be a
Let's put it on pause. Put it on pause. Put it on pause.
Black, you got your ass kicked.
My answer is that
everybody
they're within their right.
Everybody pause. Why are we not able to listen to the host of the show? Would you like me to be rude or disrespectful or not invite you back? We have a person who joined, and I would like to include them into the conversation. Mr. Daniel John,
Thank you.
you've been away for a few weeks. You came into this topic of conversation. Rob Arnold said, we're talking about race. I don't want to talk about it. Maybe this is why. You know, race is a concept created identifying people by skin color. But in India, you guys have the caste system. Would you explain to us what India is doing to move past all of that? Because it is very, very uncomfortable and sensitive. Would you just give us some background on that?
Okay, so India is doing a lot. They have had the quota system for the last 50, 70 years.
Quota, okay.
And that allows, that gives a percentage of seats for college admissions, school admissions, for jobs, all sorts of things. So if you're applying to a job with the postal system or the railway system, the quota system, you know, they started it at 10%, they moved it to 33%. Now it's more like 50% now, in order to move these backward classes to the top up front. And so nowadays you will see people from rural villages who are in the backward classes occupy high-level jobs that were not seen before. And it offends people, but you know, there's nothing that can be done because they qualified for whatever reason. And then over time, society will sort of erase itself in thinking of these people as backward classes and so forth. So the government does a lot. Yeah.
So everybody, when you reply to my question, I'm giving you a minute. After a minute, I'm cutting you off. 60 seconds, cutting you off. I'm talking over you. You're getting muted. Mr. Daniel John, I appreciate what you just shared with us, and it was very important to hear all of that. I want to remind the panelists, speaking time is 1 minute. In other situations, I may give you 30 seconds or let you elaborate. Quota is the key word that you used. When we say quota here in the United States, it's so prolific, and yet it's so antagonistic. And oftentimes that word gets associated with affirmative action, meeting quotas. Mr. Daniel John, why would that be working for India? What is the goal?
So India has a lot more population to worry about, at least 3 times that of the United States, or actually more than 3 times because they're at 1.25 billion right now. And so moving these people from backward society, people who live in rural areas, up to the forefront of society became paramount for the government when they got independence. With affirmative action, it is not really the same thing. Affirmative action looks at many other factors, not necessarily just the race alone, to be able to qualify a person. There's a formula. So I am.
Whoa. But you just said something there that's profound. You
Okay.
said affirmative action, you're a person on the right of color. You said affirmative action is not about race alone. So then why does everybody think it's a quota system? Why?
I'm not sure everybody thinks that. Maybe you do, but
That's the discussion.
It's not really called a quota system. So there's a reason why the United States government came up with this new word called affirmative, new plan called affirmative action. So their objective is somewhat the same. And there may have been a quota system in the United States as well in the past, which got changed to what is now called affirmative action, so that people are not complaining as much.
Okay, thank you. Samuel Kachera, were you paying attention?
Yes, I was. We're way off topic. Go on.
You know, and I, man, but you know something? Instead of wiping them off the effing map, maybe we need to do is put them on the map and offer equal opportunity, correcting the 400 years of bad behavior, voting one guy in who is biracial, so he's half white, doesn't necessarily correct the other 400 years. Hiring one does not mean you have a diverse marketplace. Having friends, as I've said before, does not mean that you will go into business or allow them to do business with you, or you will live in the same neighborhood. Samuel, do you understand where I'm going with this?
I think I understand where you're going with this, but I'm not sure I fully agree, because you just said hiring one right after you were talking about the presidency. So the hired one, the one which was hired by the people. Now, if you want to talk about correcting 400 years of slavery and poor rules and things like that, well, I agree with you, but what's the end game? When do people start moving forward? Brian, I take into account everything what you told me earlier, previously, when I'm asking this question, I really take it all into account. But what is the end game? When do we take responsibility to move forward for ourselves?
The end game is when the playing field is equally distributed.
Thank you.
But not everyone thinks it's not equally distributed, except
right.
I feel bad. I feel really bad to say what I'm about to say.
Does that make any sense?
I
feel really bad with what I'm about to say.
All right, say it.
But I mean it, but I don't. I'm just trying to make a point, really.
Okay.
Right? The ones who are mostly saying this are either the ones who are still, for lack of better words, left behind, and the sympathizers, like the white sympathizers, right? Because they're sitting out there, there's white people running around with Black Lives Matter, talking about, free the black people and blah, 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 right? So it's like, but why are they there? Because they're sympathizing. Okay, got that. That's cool.
But Samuel, again, I'm sorry, brother. You heard me say that I was called the N-word 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
Business conversation. And not nigga. He said nigger. In my eyes, in my face.
Yes.
3 weeks ago, I was called a cracker.
Cracker and nigger don't equate, because cracker may not get you killed. Nigger usually meant that your city was going to get burned down. You would be hanging in a tree, or we'd
back in the day. And listen, I want to make a clarification here. I want to make a clarification with you.
Well, but before you clarify, hold on.
You said called me out.
I'm not going to hold on.
Rob, wait a minute. I'd like to hear Marquis.
I'm not, because on this program, we just had a conversation about Black people being hung in trees, and it was very uncomfortable. So don't bypass Rob. Rob, on this program, we're going to acknowledge where we are. We're also going to acknowledge
me out on something. I wanted to answer it.
He didn't call you out.
Yes,
I'm giving you 60 seconds, bro.
You called me out by saying that I said I don't want to talk about race. Let's be clear here. I talk about race to the tune of public speaking to groups, audiences of 5,000 people.
Okay, but on this show, you committed to
hang
the
on,
show.
Mike, but
then
you want to
had
let me
back out last
finish?
minute.
We did 60 seconds. Is that okay?
Wow.
Sick of this.
You're right. But I'm not going to let you BS in that 60 seconds. I'm going to hold you accountable to your words. You spoke to the production manager and said after you committed, it's about race. I don't want to talk about it. As a Caucasian male, I'm going to call you out.
You said 60 seconds
You're
and you
not going
cut
to
in
ramble for
at
60
5.
seconds. You're going to answer truthfully. Okay. So, folks, Rob Arnold has left us. When you tune into Verbal Assault Talk Show, Verbal Assault live stream, we give everybody fair opportunity to speak. Unfortunately, on today's program, Rob has been out of line a couple of times, and he's cut off a few listeners. If you're that type of right-wing person, then we do not want you on this show. Go to FAUX News because they allow that. CNN, unfortunately, allows it too. I watch CNN because CNN is better at challenging those people. But let's be clear, CNN leans very, very left. I had to say 3 to 4 different times as host of the show, here you go. I model my style after Chris Cuomo. Yes, he's on CNN. Yes, he's related to the governor of New York. He's also a very good interviewer, and I've been compared to Matt Lauer. So, if you come on our program and you think you're going to ramble or get off subject, I'm going to interrupt you and pull you right back. This is not the type of place that you're going to BS. It's not. So, with that being said, to redirect the conversation, Samuel, you and I were kind of going back and forth. Do you understand why this is such an incendiary topic? Rob Arnold is very, very uncomfortable, like a lot of white America, about hearing certain things.
Okay.
New York Encarnacion, Black Lives Matter, you said, don't affiliate me with that. But in actuality, they're protesting for people like you so that you can come to this country and you can have the same opportunity because you're on the top of the boat. And some people, unfortunately, had to come in the bottom of the boat. And all of that trauma has went through 400 years. And so when people are going through 400 years of trauma and they need to get down in the street and stop traffic, and they need to scream and create a ruckus, or they need to burn something down, I don't want anything burned down too, either. But Nurka, why don't you have a conversation with me about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and tell me what your thoughts are on that? Because that was not a riot, that was a massacre, my sister. Do you understand do you understand what's happening here? So we're looking at these BLM and we want to associate them with rioters. Yet Trump is saying, well, let's hold the rally in Tulsa. His rallies are mostly Caucasian. Where was the intention to connect with those people of African descent? Where did he say, I would like to reach out to the African American community? And therefore, this is why I want to have this event on this historic holiday in this community where this massacre took place. When did he say that? You do research, sister. When did he say that? He didn't say that. So in our mind, there's no good intention there. And I really want you, Nurka, Samuel, Daniel John, I want you to help the left understand how they should take something positive about having this rally in this city with such sensitive memories.
Can I start?
And yes, please. And the audacity to say that he made Juneteenth famous. Please, Daniel John.
Okay, sorry, I just want to go back to Rob. I think the reason why you brought him into this conversation, agreed it is your show, is because
It's our show, actually.
it is our show. Okay. Is because you also want to hear some of the viewpoints of the extreme right. And to me, he represents the extreme right. I am not as far to the right as he is, but I think we all agree on one thing: he is not a racist. Otherwise, he would not have been talking to me. He would not have been talking to Sam Kuchera, Kirk
I don't
Adair.
agree with that.
Okay, so I mean that's Brian. I do not know how much you know him, but
Well, hold on. Let's acknowledge here, Brian. You don't agree with what?
About him being a racist. Of course he is.
Ooh.
he
I'm
would not have been talking to me on
That
a
doesn't mean
continuous
that.
basis for years,
Dude.
or maybe 10 years.
I've had white folk laugh in my face and I knew they were racist. Stop. One thing don't equate to the other. But go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead with your 1 minute.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan. I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Daniel John. I'm sorry, please finish, because I just needed to know what point he's challenging. Go ahead, please.
Right. And it has no relation to me, but I just wanted to say also that you gave him 60 minutes, but you did not allow him to speak for 60 minutes. And you should have allowed him to finish his thought, however bad it was, because he represents many things, which includes a person to the far right. And he also, we are challenging our views as to how white people think about all of us. Whether you're an African American, whether you are a Cherokee, whether you are a Daniel John or whoever.
But he's the host.
Allow him to have that the freedom of right to speak, so that we can understand his perspective, and thus we are able to pass it on to our audience so that they can understand how a white man who's been, 100 generations white, who probably never understand the life of a dark man in, foreseeable future.
Okay. So
gives us education in the same time.
Okay. Let me say this, Mr. Daniel John. Unfortunately, you weren't on Monday or Tuesday's program, and there's been a circulating, growing, accumulating pattern of behavior that has unfortunately become disrespectful
and confrontational.
Now, I'm a confrontational host.
Yes.
But as the host, my job is to lead the conversation. And if I need to challenge you on a point, I will stop you to interject in, to pull you back on subject, or because you're saying something so fast, the audience misses it. What I notice oftentimes with the right, the Democrats like to whine, blah, 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 and then, give people crumbs. What I notice about the right is that what they like to do is they like to redirect the conversation to negate what you said by pulling up something from 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 200 years ago and saying, well, so-and-so did this, well, why can't I? I don't understand how someone can call a whole country full of neighbors rapists and drug dealers, and a person on our panel who is a Spanish speaker still feels comfortable to support them. I don't understand it. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just being honest and saying I don't understand it. And so I want to get clarity. I'm going to say this as nicely as I possibly can, because I've been challenged by Kirk Adair before, and I've been challenged by Rob Arnold before, and I've been challenged by many Caucasian men, and I'm not saying that being challenged is a bad thing. But I've often said, as a business owner, I notice that people feel very, very comfortable to challenge a person of color or a woman in authority, but when it comes to a Caucasian male, they don't do that. They accept the fact that they're in a position of authority and they respect that. So Mr. Daniel John, to clarify, Rob has often spoken well over his 60 minutes. I don't know any other show that allows the right and the left to come in even numbers and to speak in equal time. The right has the habit of getting onto CNN and changing the topic, going in a different direction, and that's That has been a concern for the past couple of days, if not the past couple of weeks. But go ahead. You want to?
Yeah, I did not see him get his 60 minutes. After 10 seconds, 20 seconds, you started interrupting him. But also, just for everybody here, as well as the audience that's listening to our podcast, I want to say that it is not fair for African Americans to be oversensitive towards the topic of race. Just because there has been 400 years of injustice over 400 years does not mean that the moment I raise my hand or my mouth and it seems like something is going in the direction of derogatory speech, somebody else who is of a different race raises up all kinds of heck, saying, hey, I know who you are and where you come from. No, you should take it easy, listen a little bit, and perhaps Rob Arnold is not that person. Perhaps he's trying to make a point.
Right.
And
so he speaks probably more than I do, and I host the show. I will say that. Samuel Kuchera, I really want you to say something, and you're saying nothing. And I think the fact that you're saying nothing, I'm not criticizing you, brother. It's an observation, but I believe it speaks volumes because I believe that there's a lot to think about here. I really do. Black people we are being oversensitive. I'm going to close the show on that. I would like to have a conversation with the Michael Chauvins and tell them why I'm oversensitive. I would like to have a conversation with the judges who give disparities in judicial. And Yurka, you understand where I'm coming from because you see it in housing. I would like to have a conversation with them.
And I've confronted them too. I've confronted them because you said that we don't confront white men. I've confronted them. Why? Because I'm a person of principle.
Okay,
it's
so
not
again,
about color. It's about principle and dignity.
And I'm muting you. I'm sorry, Yurka. I got to mute you. I got to mute you. And again, if I'm doing the closing, I'm going to ask everybody, don't add it, please. I mentioned Yurka because I want the audience to understand where we are. So white males, if you have a problem talking about race, get over it because you need to continue having a conversation. But white men, the first thing that y'all need to do, and my Caucasian sisters, I'm talking to you too, y'all need to listen. Because there's a whole lot of history that has not been clarified. My sister, York Encarnacion, you come from the Caribbean. My brother, Daniel John, you come from Asia. There are things that you are not aware of that the books cannot tell you. There are things that are so disgusting and traumatic that our ancestors of African descent wouldn't even share those stories. So I want you all just to keep in mind, if people are still putting this type of vitriol on Facebook, maybe now you should ask yourselves, do Black Lives matter? And if they do matter, why does someone need to remind me? Thank you for tuning in to Verbal Assault Livestream. We're heard on several platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. We're growing, and so not everybody's going to be able to grow with us. If you would like to be part of the conversation and you can have a discussion and listen to the other side, then come on. But this host is going to challenge you. You don't like getting challenged? Don't come here. Because, people like to go off. People just like to be heard. And sometimes you have to interject to stop them and say, and I like to do that for our audience. So being part of the crew, being part of the cast, castcrew@gmail.com, castcrew@gmail.com. Thursday's discussion is pandemonium. Reality sets in as cases soar. We'll talk about COVID-19 tomorrow. Thank you all so much, and I look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.